So, hello Alice. Today is November 14th, 2016. We're doing another live lesson here for German. And in the previous lessons, we've gone through vocabulary for like friends, family, and talking about where they're from, where they live, what their interests are, what their likes are, and talking about their age, and talking about them in the singular form, the plural form. And also we've looked at kind of describing yourself and talking to a language exchange partner. Today we're going to get in a little into the verb conjugations for like the present tense, and also a little bit of the big picture of things to kind of keep in mind for different groups of verbs and with the pronouns in German and the different forms that you need to know. So I'm going to do a screen share here to show you this document that I put together for these kind of tables and some resources that I'm using to work on this and review this. So, so in German, we have the subject pronouns ich for the first person singular, du for the second person singular, er for the he form, sie for she, es for it. We have the plural for wir, which is like we, ihr, which is a you plural, like you guys, talking to a group of friends, somebody your age. And then we have sie and z, which are pronounced the same. And the z with the lowercase s is a they form, and the z with a capital S is a formal form. And this formal z with the capital S, that is actually considered kind of singular and plural. So I guess I could technically put z also here as a second person. Well, it is kind of second person because you're talking to somebody, like, but it's a way of having like a formal person. So I mean, I'll put it here in this second person singular there, but the way it conjugates the verbs is over here with this one. So I guess I could kind of put like an asterisk here or something like that, just to make sure it's like you're not conjugating the verb z in the singular with the do. It's just more for its kind of how you're thinking about it. It's a you form, but its conjugation is it's like this they form z. Okay, so a couple verbs that we could work with are sprechen, verstehen, handeln, arbeiten. They are considered regular verbs. Well, I know sprechen actually is a bit more irregular, but just to get you started with like the verb to speak is one of the most common verbs that most people learn how to conjugate when they're talking about whether they learn a language or speak a language. So, and also the verb verstehen, to understand. Those are some of the two most common verbs you learn when you're beginning to either you speak or you understand, or you don't speak or you don't understand. Okay, so ich spreche, ich verstehe, du sprichst, du verstehst. Notice that on sprichst, there's a letter I. This is changing from this root with the E there. Sie, es spricht. So I have this letter I again. And sie, es versteht. So I have the E that is staying in here. So this sprechen is a little bit irregular, as you can see, based on compared to the verstehen, which keeps that root the same. For the we form wir sprechen, wir verstehen, ihr sprecht, ihr versteht, sie verstehen, sie sprechen, and sie verstehen. And so you can see that most typically when you have sie, and s, you have this form like versteht, and it doubles up for the ear form versteht. For sprechen, it is different. You have sie, es spricht, but you have ihr sprecht. So you do have that pronunciation difference there. And if you look at the wir and the sie form, it is the same. So Sprechen is also the same as the infinitive and also the same as the third person form sprechen. The same here, verstehen, wir verstehen, Sie verstehen. So if you want to be formal, you just kind of use the infinitive and add the Sie form. And you can make these sentences, ich spreche Deutsch, ich spreche nicht Deutsch, sprichst du Deutsch? So I just kind of invert sprichst du, or this question, sprechen Sie Deutsch? Like a you formal, either you formal singular or you formal plural, to know if somebody speaks that language. Another group of kind of regular verbs is this group that end with the letter N, and it's, for example, handeln, so to handle. And there are some actually variations in speaking and sometimes in writing with this letter E that kind of can drop out or be used. So you have like ich handele, or ich handel, or ich handle. There is some variation there in the pronunciation. You have du handelst, sie es handelt, wir handeln, ihr handelt, sie handeln. So you can see this sie es handelt, this ELT ending is the same for this like ear form handelt, and the wir and the sie form are the same as the infinitive handeln. So that's very typical for these German verbs. Another group here, arbeiten, the ending with this like en here. So ich arbeite, du arbeitest, sie es arbeitet, wir arbeiten, ihr arbeitet, sie arbeiten. So those are some of those typical things here. You can look at things like Wiktionary.org and put in the verb, the infinitive, and get the conjugation tables. So you can see that in German, you have the present indicative here. So ich spreche, du sprichst, spricht, wir sprechen, ihr sprecht, sie sprechen. So those forms there. There is a subjunctive form. There's a preterite form, like ich sprach. There's an imperative, sprich, or sprich. There is a composed form, which is based using the verb haben, like to have, as an auxiliary verb, plus the past participle, which in this case is gesprochen, and this conjugates with the verb to have, and then you add that past participle. There's also a subjunctive form of that with the subjunctive of to have plus past participle. There's a pluperfect using the past form of have plus the past participle, and there's a subjunctive as well. There's a future using an auxiliary verb, werden, so that is like will speak, and there's even a subjunctive form like werde, so you have those as well, and there's like an infinitive for a future, and there's an indicative, like a future perfect, so, and a subjunctive. So you get these tables, and you can see how English has evolved or been related to these conjugation tables. But overall, when my German teacher was teaching me in the university, we would usually take the infinitive, like sprechen, and then we would take the third person singular, spricht. Then we'd take the past tense, like the I form, ich, and then sprach, and the past participle, gesprochen. So if you can know these forms of sprechen, spricht, sprach, and then this kind of hot gesprochen, these would be typically what you would want to memorize if you're going to learn these verbs and put them in your notebook. You would want to look at this third person singular for the present simple, past, and the past participle. And my teacher had us kind of chanting some of these verbs, just reviewing them, the parts of speech, or these parts of the verb conjugation. So he would take, I think it was the music from Beverly Hills Cop. I remember that, and we would just go through these these conjugations, just this regular rhythm, and we would go with like sprechen, sprechen, spricht, sprach, hat gesprochen, Arbeit, arbeiten, arbeiten, arbeitet, what would it be? Arbeiter hat gearbeiten. And so I have to review those forms, and this would be a way to kind of like, once you know those forms, you can kind of fill them in with the conjugations. So verstehen is another one here, like verstehen, versteht, verstand, hat verstanden, or ich habe verstanden. And these would be these conjugations for the verb to understand, verstehen. And you can see how the past stand is related to like understand in English on it. And we have handeln, and you can see these forms, how handle has kind of evolved from this verb. And you can see these forms here, handelt, handelte, gehandelt. So this ge, the GE is usually, for regular verbs, it's usually what's at the front of a verb. There are irregular verbs in German, what are called like strong verbs, and you can see how a lot of the irregular verbs that we have in English have evolved from those irregular verbs in German. But I would just kind of focus on those forms like that I showed you here, and then learn definitely the verb to be, haben, since that is a very important verb for the kind of auxiliary verb in these few other tenses that you'll be using for the like the present perfect, which is used for like the past tense, or the past perfect, things like that. And also the verb werden, which will be used in the future tense as well. But those are some of these conjugations to help you get started with your German. And just, yeah, be careful with these kind of little subtle differences, like with the s form. For some verbs, it might be a little different from the ihr form, but usually there is a kind of a relationship between this s form and the ihr form. And the z in the third person singular, or sorry, third person plural, is kind of like the formal z. So it's just the spelling if it's capital or lowercase. You know, if you're talking about somebody addressing somebody formally for that. But if you have any comments or messages here, please leave a comment on the video, and I will help relay those messages to native speakers. And if you like these videos, please like, share, subscribe, and I will keep making more content for you as you're kind of going through your basic lessons for learning these languages. So thanks for watching, and have a good day, and I hope you find these videos useful. Take care. Tschüss.